Hello, it's Phillip Taylor speaking from Richmond Green Chambers in London, and today it's my pleasure to introduce a book to you which is not directly a legal book in that sense. It's part of international trade, certainly, and it has much of a global feel about it, but the title in itself is fascinating. It's an area I'm not particularly familiar with, and I found it very useful to go through the book and look at it. It's called Commodity Trade and Finance. It's now in a second edition. It's been written by Michael Tamvakis. I hope I pronounced your name correctly. It's from Informa Law and Routledge, which is part of the Taylor and Francis group. Now, my wife Elizabeth and I looked at this book. We had a good talk about it because it's such an interesting area for us, mixing both economics and a little bit of law. We've given it the title From Informa Law, a straightforward approach to the economics of commodities, now in a new second edition. Let's have a look at the book first of all, because as I said, it's part of the Informa Law series of books. There it is. There's the front, the side, and then the back. It tells you the chapters you've got at the back. It's, as I say, it's an important book to look at. It's a heavy book too. So it is a hardback. 500 pages, just over. Then there's a very short, quite a short index, which you can see there, only a few pages. And then before that, there's the actual bit there. Then you've got the end of the book, and you've got conclusions and referencing. The structure's slightly different with this book. You have a conclusion to some of the chapters and referencing, which is very helpful. There is quite a lot of economics in it, lots of graphs for people who like graphs, lots of these things. It's an absolute treasure cavern for the economist who likes lots and lots of these wonderful little charts and maps. Reminds me of my mathematics examinations all those years ago. Now, this is the book detail. It says what the book is about. That actually is what's on the back cover as well. This is the Grammenos Library, and this is part of the Grammenos Library. I hope I've pronounced that correctly. It shows you what's available. We've reviewed one or two of these books some time ago now, but this one's on commodity trade and finance, and it's a nice little dedication there, I like to admit. And you will find all the details about the book there, including any information, because it is an e-book as well, which I have just mentioned. There's the contents section there, looking at fundamental energy economics, crude oil. Then we go into all the other different commodities. Very interesting areas. And the 16 chapters ending up with agriculture right at the end. And you've got a list of exhibits. That's all of these lovely charts which you've got. There we go, chapter by chapter there covered, and there are lots of them. So it's a statistician's delight to a certain extent. But there again, this is about economics as much as it's about law, so you would expect it. Just as if it's a legal book, you've got lots of cases. Now, therefore, fundamental energy economics just starts running off there. It's standard text all the way through. There are no footnotes as such. Obviously, the source materials are given. But as I've indicated, let's go into, let's say, the crude oil chapter. And you'll see there's a lot of OECD stuff to be expected. Lots of nice charts, as I said, and maps to show you where things are. And then right at the end, you will get the a short conclusion, which I've said, and then all the referencing material there. So if you are looking for further reading, you will find that at the end of each chapter rather than actually at the end of the book. Anyway, it's a heavy book again, an excellent book. Informa never disappoint with the standard and the quality of what they've produced. This, of course, has been around before this book. Commodities are a fascinating subject, the basis of much of what we do, of course, and therefore something very fundamental to our activities. This is what we say, this notable book on the economics of commodities and commodities trading, as well as the production and distribution of commodities, will certainly be appreciated by international commercial lawyers in a number of areas of the world where commodities are among the main sources of wealth. That includes Canada, large chunks of the US, and of course the major oil-producing Gulf states. As I said, not primarily a law book, although it's partly listed as such because it's got the international trade element to it. But the author, Professor Michael Tamvakis, has created a clear, lucid and, considering the gigantic scope of the subject matter, succinct yet information-rich account of the dynamics of key commodity groups, namely energy, agriculture and metals. Those would be the ones that would spring to my mind, certainly, and that's really what the basis of this book's about. The book actually functions, of course, as an overview of how commodities and the processes by which they are eventually accessed by the end user can do shape everyday life, including local and global politics, which of course they have done for many decades, and in fact, if you think about it, many centuries. Published, of course, by Informa Law, which is part of Routledge and the Taylor and Francis group. This is the second edition of the book, which one would surmise is destined to be regarded, I think, as a classic work on the subject, and one in which Tamvakis is demonstrably an expert. He's Professor of Commodity Economics and Finance at Cass Business School, and his areas of expertise include international commodity trade, commodity derivatives and the economics of energy and shipping. And we are talking here about big money, so it's an important area for all of us to take note of, in my view, and certainly I recommend this book as good reading for anybody doing a BSc economics, certainly, and a very good book for people with a general interest in commodities and where we're going at the moment as a planet, as our resources do tend to start being used up. So this new and updated edition I think is well worthwhile and timely. It's been completely revised and restructured, and it contains new chapters on oil refining, electricity and price risk management for energy, metals and agricultural commodities. The chapters on oil and refined oil products and on iron ore and steel are particularly illuminating, and Tamvakis points out that even though all main groups of commodities are of paramount importance in our lives, it's energy, that's the energy sources, oil, gas and so forth, that occupy our immediate concern and attention, particularly in times of crisis, which we've had in the UK on a number of occasions, especially as they comprise the largest of the key commodity groups. And that's really part of what I was thinking of earlier when you think of some of the energy problems we've had in the past, and in 2015 where we might be going. Think back even 40 or 50 years to what was happening then, and cast yourself forward to the middle of this century and think, well, what are we going to be doing then? Because some of these resources are going to be worked out, putting it bluntly, and then we're going to start having to look for other things. We're already looking at those, but commodities, of course, still are a very, very important area. The book is written in a very clear, straightforward prose. It's logically structured. It's replete with revelations about, for example, the characteristics of commodities and markets, as well as methods of extraction, production, transport, distribution, pricing, and so on. What, for example, causes fluctuations in oil prices? And is there, in fact, a world shortage of iron ore? The book answers these and literally hundreds of other such questions, clarified throughout by illustrative charts, diagrams and maps. Now, I wasn't really taking the mickey about all of these charts, because I do think they're fascinating, and obviously we're not, in my profession, we're not actually using that sort of thing very often, but in economics I know how important it is to you guys, so therefore it is actually very helpful, because it's nice to have a picture of what you think is happening. So I don't mean that in any jokey sense, really. In examining the fundamental economics of commodities, therefore, of all kinds, this book actually makes facts fascinating and puts key economic activities in perspective. That's what I liked about it, I think, more than anything else. It will certainly attract the interest of academics, students, economics, economists, and of course those working in any aspect of commodities. That would include, of course, legal practitioners on the international commercial stage seeking a background information to support any advisory activities they may be giving for corporate and commercial clients. And the laws, or rather the publication date and the area that we're looking at, is cited as at 2015. Let's have a quick look at the book again. I do find it quite interesting. It's actually listed as a commercial law book. There's the back, you see it actually. But it isn't really. It's an economics book in my view. But however, I do like it. Now I'm going to go back to these lovely charts again. There we go. You've got some really interesting ones. Now, if you are a chart person, I mean, these really are quite helpful because they will give you, if you know what you're looking for, they'll give you a really good idea of what is happening in terms of some of the problems that are taking place at the moment. I mean, this is almost like a sort of PowerPoint presentation table exhibit, which is about coal. You're going to the front of it again. Do start reading the beginning of it because it does try to set the scene, I think, very well. And as I've indicated before, the most important area is depending on what you're looking at, is the detail in the contents, the chapter contents itself, because the index is pretty minimal, putting it at the back. Anyway, thank you very much, Michael Tamvakis, and all the people involved in this book. I feel it's a little treasure. I'm delighted to have been able to review it, and so is my wife. It was something that had us talking for some time, so thank you for that as well. But do read it, and it's a great contribution to Commodities. Thank you. Bye-bye.